Hi, my name's Walter. This is a tutorial about sound and especially things like microphones and cables and all the bits and pieces necessary to get sound from the microphone or your fancy little phone device or whatever it is you're using, whatever your sound source is, to whatever your sound target is. You might be recording, or you may also be just playing the sound through some speakers, amplifying. And so we're going to talk about, first of all, the devices, the voltage, and perhaps the some of the things that may get in our road and how we work around them or clear them out of our way. But it also includes devices like CD players and your computer and anywhere that sound originates. And we'll talk about how to get it to where we want it to go and what we can do along the way. So the next, in the first instance, we're going to talk a little bit about microphones here. So microphones, because there's actually in a lot of microphones, especially like this is called a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphone. There are a couple of types of microphones. These larger ones are usually called dynamic mics, and then there's often a very small one, and you might see, like on singers who are wearing a tiny little microphone on their face, often very, very lightweight, or a little lapel mic. They're called condenser microphones. Dynamic mics have no battery. Condenser mics do have a small battery in there, but they still don't generate a great deal of signal at all, don't generate much signal. And even a telephone or some electric device like this generates only a very small amount of signal, perhaps around 1 volt. So the implications of low voltage is that a low voltage piece of wire, or a piece of wire carrying a low voltage like the voltage given off by a dynamic mic, and remembering that the entire voltage is generated just by the sound bouncing off a very thin membrane. So we're really just talking about thousandths of a volt. So in a device like that gives off thousandths of a volt, and we're hoping to carry this signal down a long line, it becomes prey to a whole bunch of, extraneous signals that come from all over the place. So every extension cord, of course, is something of a little transmitter, and in fact any device that uses electricity is pretty much, you could consider them all to be little transmitters of interference. And the lower the voltage in a line, the more susceptible that line is to interference. So how is that introduced? Any device that plugs into the wall runs on what we call alternating current. So what the current that comes from the wall plug in your house or in a hall or auditorium where you're working, or wherever it is you're trying to fool around with sound, any plugged-in device you could consider to be a transmitter of interference. The reason why is, as the current flows, and the current very rapidly flicks between negative and positive, thus it's called alternating current. So as that current flows, and as it changes between negative and positive, an electric field or a magnetic field around the cable builds and falls in line with that change. So in other words, everything is currently broadcasting a tiny little electromagnetic or a little magnetic signal. That signal is picked up by any wire, especially wires with low voltage, or in fact any wire picks it up fairly equally. But if you've only got low voltage flowing through the wire, it has proportionately a much greater impact on the signal that's flowing through that wire. So in summary, we are dealing with devices that are quite sensitive and quite sensitive to interference. We need to be quite careful therefore with the cables that we use, what kind of cables we're going to use. We can't just grab a bit of wire, a bit of old electrical wire we've got lying around and hope that will work out. And also any wires that we have that are well made and that are workable for the purpose, we need to be a little bit careful with. And there are some tutorials I've seen around on YouTube here that you can easily find that talk about how to look after your cables, and I think it's well worth, if you're getting into this industry, to watch one or two of those. It's quite interesting. Okay, thank you very much for watching. My name's Walter Kahn. The next tutorial is going to be about the cables themselves.